All right. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to this Simbi webinar. My name is Caitlin Allen. I'm the SVP of Market here at Simbi. And as most of you probably know since you registered, we are representing the store intelligence platform that is trusted by dozens of retailers around the globe. And today we have an amazing panel of experts, real life operators that are going to help us explore the results of our inaugural store team technology sentiment report, which is we're gonna talk about what store teams really think about using robots in the store, as well as some of the tried and true best practices, and maybe some horror stories and tales of triumph as we've gone through this process together. So first, really quickly though, just some brief logistics. If you could introduce yourself in the chat, we were just talking about how the weather is in the different places we're calling in from: St. Louis, Grand Rapids, Dallas, LA. Would love to hear where you're calling in from, what the weather is like today. Feel free to throw your title in there. Tell us why you're here. I love using the chat on these. It's a great way to have a conversation with us, so we're not talking at you, but with you. This webinar is being recorded and it will be shared with you. So know that that's coming your way. And then we're going to start off by introducing the folks on this panel who I have loved getting to know over the last months and prepping together the last weeks. And they're going to talk a little bit about their careers, how they got into their line of work, and then what their roles are as they've introduced Tally, our robot at Simbi, to their stores. So maybe we can go left to right on the slide and start with you, Adrian.
Thanks, Caitlin. Hi, everybody. Nice weather over here in St. Louis. It's going to be in the mid-90s today, so I'm looking forward to that a little bit, as long as I stay inside in the air conditioning. I've been with Schnucks for 16, going on 17 years now. Started in 2007 when I was going to school in the produce department. Before then, worked for Jewel-Osco for a couple of years when I was in high school. And I've done a lot of different things for Schnucks, both in the stores through departments, but then also getting into the field, project management. And then in 2019, I moved down to St. Louis from the Rockford area to work in operations. And since I've been in operations, I've done many, many things for the organization, from managing our homegrown inventory management software to managing front end and trash and sanitation for the stores, into my latest foray, which I've been doing for the past 2 years now, is senior manager of operational excellence, specifically focusing on labor, industrial engineering, scheduling, and our employee self-service software. So really a focus these days for process improvement, making sure that we're driving hours correctly for the stores, and making sure that we're accounting for every piece of work that's happening in the stores, because with where labor is going in the future, we really have to be dialed in, and that makes things like Tally super important. Little unique piece is that for the last 4 months, from mid-January to about mid-May, I was actually a store manager. So I got sent out to go run a store for 4 months as part of my development plan for a long time, and it was finally the right time to do it. So I was also on the team that helped roll out Tally, and for the last 4 months, I got to actually use it on an everyday basis, and really see the ins and outs and how the team interacts with it and what the impacts are at the store a lot more closely than I did during the original rollout. So really excited to talk to everybody today.
Yeah, such an amazing perspective in multiple roles. So thank you for being here, Adrian. John.
Hey, good afternoon in the Eastern time zone. I live in Grand Rapids, about a Grand Rapids, Michigan. Weather here is 80 with very low humidity. So I would tell you for sure, if I wasn't working today, I would be on the golf course or at the beach, because it is just such a nice day here. And we're very spoiled to have like great summers in the Mitten States. So as it says here, I'm a finance manager specializing in retail operations at SpartanNash. I kind of backed into the finance department because my real specialty is retail operations, and I've worked in our retail stores for close to 12 years before transitioning into the finance and in different sort of capacities, including running our stores as an assistant. So kind of a good perspective for, where not always our corporate people have an understanding of what is going on at stores. So I have a unique perspective that when they call, I actually get what's going on at their locations. In terms of Spartan Nash, we're probably the biggest company that nobody's heard of, but we are a food solutions company, and we deliver the ingredients for a better life through customer-focused innovation, and that is a very vague term on purpose because I think that comes in a lot of different ways. We are a leading grocery distributor and retailer, and we serve over 2,000 independent stores, and we also run 155 of our own stores, kind of in the Great Lakes Upper Midwest region under the banners of Family Fare, D&W, and Martin Supermarkets. So pretty much anybody that's in Northwest Indiana, Michigan, Omaha, all recognize those names. And we've been using the Symbii technology specifically since 2022. So excited to be here.
I gotta tell you, I thought you liked pickleball, so now I gotta hear about the golf game too.
Yeah, and I do like playing pickleball.
We'll talk about that later on, maybe. JW, you want to introduce yourself and maybe tell people why I call you JW?
Sure. My name is Jeremy Wartzman. Go by JW here at Symbii because there are two Jeremys in a company of not very many people. There are two Jeremys, so I am JW. So I have spent most of my career in retail. Started with Circuit City. If anybody had Circuit City as a retail reference on your bingo card, there you go. So yeah, started at Circuit City, advertising CDs part-time for beer money in college, and fell in love with retail. So moved up with Circuit City as a sales manager, ran stores for a few years with them, went to Target in 2008, ran stores for Target for about 10 years, also spent a little bit of time as a regional food and beverage director. So specifically working with our grocery teams and kind of helping lead and develop and reduce markdowns and things of that nature. So learned a lot about the overall retail business, and then went to kind of start things on my own, and not necessarily on my own, but helped a local grocer turn into sort of a regional grocer by writing best practices and helping them expand. And yeah, from there really got into the startup world. So I joined GoPuff, which GoPuff was very small when I joined, had about 150 micro fulfillment centers, and then they grew into an international delivery organization that had over 500 fulfillment centers, micro fulfillment centers, and really just helped write best practice and standardize and help them grow efficiently and effectively. So I was with them for almost 4 years, and I joined Symbii about 3 months ago, and excited to do the same. Just really help Symbii grow, but then more importantly, help our customers be successful. So I'm the Senior Director of Customer Success, and I'm really able to leverage my retail background to just speak the same language as our customers, and then ultimately help them be successful with what's probably the most amazing technology I've worked with. So
Cool. Well, thank you so much, gentlemen, for introducing yourselves, and to the audience. I think it's hopefully obvious, but really great breadth of different vantage points here, I guess, about how technology gets deployed and adopted well. So excited to dive in, and maybe we can start off setting the stage really quickly. So we know increasing store team retention and operational excellence and cost disciplines are top priorities for retailers today, and yet we also know that the quit rate for retail workers is often 70% higher than other industries, with labor turnover reaching up to 95% in recent years. And monotonous tasks are the top reason that retail workers list as their reason for departing. In fact, many say that they wish that they had access to better technology to use at work so that they can spend less time on those manual tasks and more time with customers. And that's due in part to lack of proper tools for tasks like inventory management, which associates consistently cite as their least favorite store team responsibility. And that was actually true in our survey as well. So we're going to start off here, and then we'll dive into the results. Adrian, having been on both sides of the fence, what are your thoughts about these challenges? Is this data accurate? Does it align with your experience?
Yeah, it certainly does. I think, seeing most recently with my teammates at my store, and, I've had plenty of visibility into the other stores as well, numerous store visits, but people are always looking to do more. I think if people buy into the culture of the store, they want to give their spin on things. And when you're operating in such a black and white area on something like inventory control and going to scan, zeros on the shelf, or going to scan something we used to do called display capture, scanning every single item on every display and every shipper every single Thursday. It's hard to see the value in it. And I think what's more important is that when you eliminate a task like that, you actually can convert what that person was doing into something that is more complex or can be focused on the customer or actually drives a result. I remember in the past when I would do many of these items that Tally does now, when I was a center store manager or a center store clerk, a lot of it was I would scan everything, but then didn't do anything with the list. So I wasn't fixing a problem. I wasn't addressing a customer's needs. I was just checking off the box, and something that's easily replaceable by a solution like Tally. What I found really cool from our teammates is that they always want to get involved too. So, I mean, it's such an issue on the monotony that they will actively help you find solutions, especially when you deploy new technology. So many good ideas have come from our store teammates about, hey, we noticed it's operating this way. Have you guys thought about this? Or have you thought about this use case? I think when it's something exciting like that really has a powerful impact on their day-to-day work, they really buy in and they become part of the total machine and get you to that next level result.
Yeah, that's really well said. John, JW, anything to add there?
Well, the thing I'll add is luckily that our turnover at Spartan National retail stores is not at 95%. We do a lot of hard work to not have it be really anywhere close to that. But we are very aware, and this is where the unique perspective of being, at the corporate office versus at a store, you can see the total investment that I know that our company is making to technology. And it's more to take the tedious and the manual task out of our store. And I think of what our chief supply officer, Dave Petco, he always says, how do you take out the footsteps and how do you take out the fingerprints? And that's where, the store technology and really investing in programs like for us, we're investing in Tally. We have these Revo safes that are helping us with our cash office and our bookkeeping, and an expiration date management that digitally captures our expiration dates so that when our products are always fresh. So all that stuff means that we're taking out footprints and we're taking out fingerprints, and we're taking out the stuff that our associates really don't like to do. And I can tell you that they don't like to do them because just like Adrian, I had to do them and I didn't like it. And, when you're scanning stuff or you're doing, you bring in a human element, you bring in some sort of bias, whether you like it or not. No matter how much I had pride in my job, and I'll throw myself under the bus. You guys can't see this, but I'm like 6'3", and I hate going down on those bottom shelves and scanning holes. They're like, especially if that's where the holes are, I would be like, nah, we got that, or that's out at the warehouse. And so, having this sort of technology that we've invested in means that instead of actually doing this job and being bitter about what I have to do, I can be more positive and I can spend more time interacting with the customer, which is what we kind of really all want to do at the retail stores, is build those relationships.
Yeah, that's said so well. And I hadn't thought about being 6'3" and needing to squat down because you've got about a foot on me. So thank you for that perspective.
Nail the top shelves though, all the time.
Yeah, see, and I would need heels for that one for sure, which would lend its own problems, I'm sure, to the job. But thank you. So I think, maybe really quickly touching on why this topic matters from a quantitative perspective, in addition to the extremely valuable qualitative lens you both gave there. CoreSite research from earlier this year, I think it was in March, showed that although doing the tedious tasks we're talking about, inventory management, doing them very well really matters, especially related to managing out of stocks and pricing and promotions. Over 90% of the retailers that were surveyed for this this report. It was a total of 150, all with revenues upwards of $1 billion. Almost 97% of those 10 reported that the in-store efficiencies related to out of stocks and price and promotion execution cost them over 5% operating margin and 5% revenue annually. So, John, maybe we can kick it back to you because you have a fairly unique perspective here, with the retail hat that you wear. Is this data surprising at all?
No, not really. It doesn't really surprise me because, and I always think of like the lens that I've worked at, at Spartan Nash, but especially in our center store departments, I would quantify, especially around out of stocks, as almost a data desert. Like we just don't know because there is never really a good way of measuring like what the impact of those out of stocks were or what the out of stock causes were. In general at all. We could, do whole scans and whole counts and have sticky notes at the end of aisles to say, are we getting better or worse? But at the end of the day, we don't know. We didn't know what the cause of those out of stocks were. So, the one thing that tallies allowed us to do is really shine a bright spotlight on an area that was traditionally that's in the shadows. And, I'm going to save it for later because I got some more stuff about this, but it's really enabled us to drive results and drive top line sales because once we understood that there was a problem and the cause of the problem, we were better off where we could attack it.
Yeah, that's really well said. And I'm really excited to get into some of those results. And I think part of what you're talking about as well is this other data point is it reflected in this other data point from the CoreSite report as well? Basically 90% of retailers have or plan to invest in this kind of technology by the end of the year, which is another way of saying that there's a competitive edge still, but the aperture for it is narrowing. And I think that's probably why, and JW, I imagine you would agree, it's probably why we're seeing an uptick in interest in our technology, even beyond the interest that's been significant in the past. I think, before we move on to the data, JW, Adrian, do these data points resonate with both of you, given your experiences managing stores and then in the alternate roles that you've served in?
Like from my point of view, I think the numbers make sense, that they're completely what I would expect. I think the one thing that I would kind of like add on to what John and Adrian said is the consistency of technology versus the consistency of humans. And I don't mean that like in a disparaging way towards associates in any way, but what I do mean is, and for those of you guys who are on this call who have worked in a retail store before, that the plan is the plan until it's not anymore, right? Like there can be rushes of customers, there can be regional visits, there can be all sorts of different things that will ultimately derail the person from doing the job that they were supposed to be doing. And the consistency of robotics, I mean, robots can't help customers, right? There's a lot of things that robots can't do. And so that's why, number one, the people will always be necessary, but number two, the technology will always be consistent. So like that would be the only thing that I would kind of like tack on, is that additional reason why people are looking to invest in the technology and why it makes people's jobs easier.
Yeah. First of all, I want to say, John, you brought back a kind of a core memory to me when you were talking about sticky notes. Back to my 16-year-old days at Jewel, we had a backstock technically above the top shelf, and the manager would go around and put notes on, and I'd go behind and run it to fill it all. So thanks for bringing that memory up. But I guess what I would say here and add is, I think when you invest in technology, if you're being smart about it, you're investing in technology that is really going to open up the time for your high level talent in your departments, right? Think about your centers for manager, your leads or assistants, however you might frame them, or anyone else across the store. And what Tally's opened up for us in combination with ESL's electronic shelf labels is a ton. We've been able to shift so many of these hours that we were utilizing high level talent for, and get those teammates back to managing the department, working with customers, training our teammates. I think where a lot of the inefficiencies come with a total department operation is that we're utilizing high level talent to do monotonous tasks that a robot could do, and to Jeremy's extent, a lot more consistently as well. And how much is a department walk from your center store manager worth? A ton. They can address planogram issues that they see or that the robot told them about. They can see DSD out of stocks and they can go, address those immediately. They're reacting on the fly and they're fixing things in real time because they actually have the time to do that now and they have the bandwidth to do that. So I think that's what retailers are starting to see, and they're starting to see success stories. And that's why there's such a big plan for investment.
Yeah, Adrian,
Yeah,
hey,
that
just to piggyback on that, I've actually had because we're in the midst of a Tally expansion. I've been out for the last month doing trainings, and what we found more is because, like what you're saying, like your high level talent, like they're the ones who are being counted on to do these cycle or counts of holes and everything else and scanning of holes. And because they're putting out so many fire drills because of whatever other reason, maybe they don't have the help. These are the tasks that aren't necessarily getting done and being maintained. And so the technology, because obviously the tasks aren't very fun to do. And so, our technology, like Jeremy said, with the consistency is saying, hey, instead of you doing this once a month, we're basically doing it twice a day for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really is that simple. All right, well, let's get into the report. So, because I'm like, now I'm kind of chomping at the bit. I want to hear some of these details in more depth. So for the audience, this report, the data in the report is as of May 1st of this year. The online survey was conducted across nearly 200 store managers at US-based retailers. Simbi ran the survey between April 1st and April 20th of this year as well. And the store managers that were surveyed had been using Tally, our inventory robot, for at least 6 months or more. And there's a margin of error with a 95% confidence level of plus or minus 7%. So in terms of what we found out, the majority of the 200 store managers cited multiple positive impacts of the tech, including being more fulfilled and productive in their roles and getting to do more of what they love on the job, which then showed up in the metrics that the stores cared about, right? Like store sales, customer service and success, as well as increases in shopper loyalty. So let's get in, like, obviously you guys have kind of referred a little bit to, like, there's this whole evaluation and selection process of technology that I think is an important and maybe separate conversation. We can have it another time. But when it gets to deploying, so when technology has been selected, a really core part of that, Adrian, as you know, is communicating with the store teams and empowering them to actually want to use the technology and then get value from it. And they might even have some very real questions or concerns about the technology that's coming down the pike. So based on your experience, what advice would you have for the audience? What learnings would you like to share about maybe some do's and don'ts?
Yeah, sure thing. And I've been involved in a lot of projects where I've got to learn that firsthand, including Tally. But based on a lot of feedback and a lot of just real learnings, I think one of the first things is before you even release this, communicate it when you're coming up with the plans, is you need to be realistic. Understand the environment that's out there at that moment, or that will be out there at the time you deploy. You have to go out there and enable your teams to actually complete the new processes that you may be building. If you ask too much too quick, I think you really run the risk of losing your audience very fast. And if you can make more of a slow build while still getting ROI and still getting results, then that's really going to be one of your best bets. I think as well, before you roll out, you really got to drive true alignment in your organization on what the expectations are. Whether that's in the corporate office, so someone like John working someone with the head of operations, whether it's division leadership, like a division manager, or any field merchandisers or field leaders, anyone from the merchant side, anyone going to visit a store and have a tailored conversation about how the experience is going with the new process, like Tally. They all have to be speaking from the same place. They all have to know what the expectations in the store teams are at that time. It's because when you start hearing the different filtered messages and the different expectations, again, you run the risk of losing your audience. So super important. that, you go there with the right mindset. I think as well, especially from the communication side, you have to have an established channel for feedback loops and be real focused on response. Whether it's there's an issue and they need a solution right away and you get it to them, whether it's like I was talking about earlier, the ideas, right? How else can we leverage this? This is what my store is doing. Give feedback, even if you don't take action on it right away. The stores are in the active process of buying in. So give them that real-time feedback to their ideas, let them know that someone's looking at that and that it's not just a message going to nowhere. I think one of the last things as well is when you're looking at how technology gets deployed or how processes get deployed to the store, in my opinion, and no bias, but I was doing it for the last 4 months, your number one partner is that store manager. They are going to drive everything. They drive the priorities of the store on a day-to-day basis, right? And there's leeway for the department managers to do that. But when there's non-negotiable things coming through the pipeline, that store manager is really going to drive the focus for you. And I think you need to start with visibility for that store manager on what the performance is. Don't let that be ambiguous. Don't let that be an unknown. They need to really know if the store team is doing the job that they're being asked to, or if they're just checking off a box. And I think if you get all of that in line, you have the mechanisms to really handhold the deployment and, like I said, slow builds to really, really high success rates.
Yeah, it's so well said. Like, being able to say that more than 9 in 10 store managers would prefer to do their work without Tally, or with Tally, pardon me. They would prefer to do their work with Tally. That requires a lot of science, and you just highlighted a lot of those elements of what's required. John, SpartanNash has had kind of some of the paced rollout that Adrian was just talking about. What things would you add to do's and don'ts that you've learned along the way?
Yeah, just to emphasize what Adrian said, you cannot underestimate the importance or even, hit it more, that having your CEO and your, retail executive vice president and your CIO and, everybody at that corporate level, talking about Tally and seeing that they're bought in, it makes it very much easier to sell it to the stores when you have the backing of that senior leadership team. Tony's been huge with it. Our EVP of retail operations, Tom, huge on Tally and other technologies as well. The only thing I'd add to Adrian is one thing that we learned early on with our proof of concept stores when we first rolled it out to the 5 was the importance of engaging each associate where they are on the pyramid as well. So not just what's Tom's role and what's Tony's role and what's my role, but what's the guy that's stocking shelves? All they're going to see is a robot and it's doing inventory and it's going to say, is it coming for my job or what is this? And they are the base of the pyramid. So we were very conscious of making sure that we engaged with them even before the robot landed at the store to tell them, hey, how do you drive results? Because it's different than how I drive results. And it's different than how a store manager would drive results. And so we worked our way up the pyramid and outlined each individual job to make sure that they knew exactly what was expected of them in order to drive results. But we really geared it to making sure that there was one person at each store who was ultimately responsible. And Adrian, maybe a little different than what you guys did at Schnucks with the store manager. We actually wanted to engage our assistant store managers and our center store managers, because ultimately when we do, our structure is that's who's responsible for the center store. So we wanted to make sure that they knew that this technology was coming and they knew how it was going to benefit their job, because ultimately, whenever anything comes in, we want to know how's it going to benefit us. So we wanted to make sure that they were absolutely locked in on what was expected. And we kept our expectations actually really, really simple. So everybody from Tony down to the night person knew exactly what our goal was and where we wanted to be. The last thing I would say is And we all know it, and we all know who it is in our stores and in our company. Who are our detractors going to be, and how do you turn those detractors into people who are going to be supporters of the technology? And it's happened at every technology rollout that I've ever seen, whether it be perpetual inventory management, so auto ordering, even these like smart safes and expiration management. There's people who think they can do it better. And again, it's not about doing it better. I think Jeremy, like you kind of gave me a light bulb about being consistent about doing things. And so, we really try to engage those people even more hands-on, to make sure that they were, ready to go and seeing the benefit of being out on the floor versus in the back room.
Yeah, and I think the point you made as well about like top-down support for these kind of investments are so important because it aligns the entire company, regardless of role, around a strategy and execution of it and its priority. And I'll put this in the chat in a minute. Like, I loved seeing Tony, your CEO, talk about how much the team loves Tally on Mad Money earlier this year. That was amazing, and so I think that really drives the priority across the org, at least from what we've seen. GW, I'm curious what best practices we've seen across our customer base that you can highlight. Like, one of the things that stood out to me from the survey was the fact that I think it was 90% of store managers said that Tally makes their jobs easier and increases their productivity and operational efficiency. And things like the pick path optimization that some stores use for fulfilling orders was mentioned, alongside other use cases. So curious what some of those best practices or use cases are.
Yeah, I think these guys really nailed what those best practices are, just in the way that they answered the last question. But I think that the companies that have truly focused on the communication and those feedback loops are the ones who've been able to develop that store manager first mentality. Like, they're getting the feedback from the field on what's important, and I think that helps drive adoption. So like I said, these guys nailed it, and I couldn't say it any better myself. I think that the one thing that as far as like a don't, or some of the things that I feel like could detract, but honestly just haven't, because our customers have done a really nice job of this, is the kind of mentality that Tally's going to give you so much data that you never had before, right? And it's going to uncover operational defects. It's going to uncover things within the process that don't work as efficiently as you think that they might. And so I think that the important thing there is that, our customers have taken the approach of, let's fix this together, or let's come up with a different way, or let's maybe slightly modify the way that we're doing things, and using it as a true operational effectiveness tool, versus saying, well, our stores aren't executing, right?
Sure.
Like, so I think that that's a super important side of things. And I think that's part of what has made things successful is, again, it's a collaboration. It's a two-way communication, sometimes 3-4-way communication, because it's not just store operations and IT. It's, you've got merchandising is involved, and I mean, just several different parts of the organization can truly benefit from this. Finance, obviously, with John, you being on the call as well. So it's just that true interdepartment communication that happens that really drives that.
Yeah. And Sarah, I do see your hand. If you don't mind, we're gonna save questions for the very end. If you want to put a chat question in for now, I'm happy to answer. I appreciate you doing that. Let's talk very quickly. So we just spoke a lot about internal communication, which is obviously the very important first step. What happens with how we communicate to the public in these moments? Like, John, I think you had extremely positive reception from shoppers at SpartanNash. I remember meeting a mom named Anna who has 4 kids and 2 twins that have really severe allergies, and she was telling me that she only now shops at D&W, one of your flagship stores, because Tally always makes sure that the items that she needs that often aren't anywhere else are in stock. But what are some of the things that some of the ways you communicated with the public that set that up for success?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I got to meet Anna as well, and it's really cool to see that. We're lucky at SpartanNash to have a really phenomenal communications team. And it's a communications team that, is broken down into external and internal communication. So, externally, obviously having Tony going on Mad Money and talking about Tally, and, having Tom and Mazier, our retail store EVP and our chief information officer talk about technology in our stores, it really helps, get the word out that we're trying to do stuff. But the real key into engaging the shopper and the public was our internal communication team. We have these, they did a really good job of providing a frequently asked questions document, because, when people see like a Roomba on wheels, sorry, Jeremy, going around with cameras, they tend to get freaked out. They don't know what's going on. And we really engaged, like, specifically our front end team and our cashiers, because they're often the last people that our store teams or our shoppers see before they leave the store. And it might sometimes, hopefully not, be the only person they see and engage with. And so that's who's probably going to get the most questions, is that center store team. So we did a really great job of talking about, hey, this robot is here so that, and it's checking inventory so that your favorite items, just like Anna said, are here when you want them, and are always in stock and always fresh.
Yeah.
I felt the collective
Adrian,
gasp of our hardware teams whenever you said Roomba on wheels, just so you know.
Yeah, my apologies to Morgan.
we can send him a gift after this. Adrian, one of the other results from the survey highlighted how much Tally improves customer service, and Schnucks is known for its customer service as well. What would you add to what John said around, the benefits of freeing up time for store teams and how that's perceived by your shopper population?
Yeah, I mean, the perception will really show up in survey results, right? But you see it across the store as well. But more of the person that is actually walking around as opposed to head down, doing those tasks. They actually can see the customers now. So I think it shows itself from there. And John made some great points about the front end as well. But what I think we've done really well is leverage Tally as kind of like a mascot at Schnucks. We have coloring pages that the kids can grab or color right there at the store. We use it in different videos that go out. I mean, it's really like a teammate at the store, and a lot of the customers love seeing Tally. I think that's kudos on the communication overall on how we rolled it out. And I think honestly, one of the best design choices of it was putting eyes on it and the little sounds that it makes. It really gave it a personality, and I think it made it that much easier for people to accept Tally. So it's not just a customer service approach and what's improved from our teammates, but it's also like, what has that store experience done with having this robot that has a personality that's traversing the store multiple times per day, interacting with a lot of customers.
Yeah. And you're reminding me of what Tyler, John's boss, talks about sometimes, about how kids ask their families to go shopping on weekends instead of during the week so that they can go. And then the amount of time they stay in the store and the amount they spend has increased as a relationship to that. John, speaking of you, these results on the screen were reflective of some of your initial findings via the daily reports and the pick lists that you generated for your team. I guess maybe you can walk us through some of this, and specifically through the lens of, like, do you even have reason to believe that Tally helps you sell more and have stronger customer loyalty, which is one of the results from the survey that we found?
Yeah, there's no doubt. There's no doubt. I was just looking at this because we were just like looking at the first 15 stores that we did before we did our last rollout. And the one thing that surprised me, and this is surprising me, and I've been doing this since 2000, since we first rolled out in 22. It continues to blow me away that we walk into a store that doesn't have Tally, and that's going to get Tally, and we think that we're executing in a certain way, and in the best way, and we come to find out once we get the baseline data that maybe we weren't doing it as well as we thought we were doing. Again, it's a black hole, a data desert, and all of a sudden we're getting data saying, hey, maybe you're not as good as you are. That's a that's a tough thing to look at, and we really had to look ourselves in the mirror once we got the first couple results back. But after the 30 seconds of holy cow, it was time to like put our boots on and get to work and figure out how we're going to address it. And so our store teams worked really, really hard. And just like Adrian said about, making it a priority amongst your store, like your store manager, and they're going to drive the results. We have really great leaders at our store that understand that we're in the grocery business and we can't sell groceries if they're not on the shelf. And so they realized, hey, maybe we after they kind of put their ego aside, they said, let's use the technology to actually drive top line sales. And actually kind of behind the curtain, when we did the return on investment for this activity or for this technology, we never put in any sort of savings for labor, which is kind of rare for us. Like usually we kind of say, how much is this going to save us in labor? Because it's the easiest way to make an ROI. It was all top line sales. It was all about getting groceries on the shelf. And when I talked to our teams over the last couple months, that's been the very first focus is like, our job is to sell groceries. This helps us get groceries on the shelf. So let's go out and let's execute. And so once we got over that, we were actually seeing really fast, results, really, really quick. I see reduced out of stocks by 60%. That might even be on the low side. We've actually, in one of our stores went from having about 6% out of stocks down to 2%. So that's a 75% improvement. And that might have been an extreme example, but we're not, saving 30 hours per month per store. Again, that's not really a savings. That's all hours we're redirecting back to serving our customer and being in like Adrian said, heads up instead of heads down.
Sure.
And
we have
definitely seen in our stores that have tally versus stores that don't have tally, they have higher comp sales, they have higher margins, and they're selling more items than stores that don't have tally. And the stores know it and they can feel it. And I know they can feel it because when I go to stores that don't have tally and they know who I am, they know that I'm the tally master at SpartanNash. They didn't let me put that on my little name. It had to say my real name, but the first thing they ask is, when are we getting tally?
No kidding. That's cool.
Yeah.
I love hearing that, obviously. My mind is going to, because you both are such, and by both I mean SpartanNash and Schnucks, are both such leaders in institutionalizing best practices. And Adrian, I know that Schnucks has seen similar improvements in productivity and operational efficiency alongside the morale that we've talked about. What are some of those best practices? And I think some of it's just specific to use cases that are the ways that you're using tally and tally data, but would love to understand a little bit of that look under the hood.
Yeah, for sure. I think the first thing is you can have best practices, but if it's best practices on a bad operation, then how good are those practices really? So you got to really start from the lens of, like John talked about, is everybody doing the right thing? And tally just doesn't open up in-store operations on what are they doing. It's how are the reset crews executing with planogram execution? How is the store doing with throw and load? What are the pick rates like coming from the warehouse? Because you can get a lot of that information from outs that you see on load that just came in. So I think when you settle all of that and you start thinking about, okay, we think we have everything where we need it to be, how do we get a best practice out to the stores? Something that we really focused on is, tally can do so many things. It can show us the actionable outs, right? And first of all, that's a major win because we go from spending time on discovery to spending time on action. But it can get us that. It could also tell us where we have bad tags, right? You see in that lower right-hand corner, the 99.5% pricing and promo accuracy. It could show us items that might be missing from our load that the warehouse either shorted us on or mispicked. So what do we do with that? Well, we put it all together, right? And we put it in a one-stop place where they can go in aisle sequence, right? So it's not just in aisle sequence shopping for pickers, it's also for your teammates. That way they can address each aisle as they go in order, because Tally knows where every single thing is at, and it's generating the process for what is populating in your lists. And ours is in a handheld device that stores can check off and continue. But it started before then, even with an SOP, and making sure that, if stores were going to be looking for items to fill to the shelf, well, start in the back room, go through the trucks and grab the items. And then as you're walking and completing your list, they're on the spot, whether you have them or not. And I think, threefold is you can have a best practice, right? And you can have a good SOP, but from a verification standpoint, you need to have some controls there. And something that we do is based on, and I'm not sure if you do this as well, John, but based on the specific actionable out you're addressing, you have to prove whether or not an item is there and it was captured as an out. You have to scan an actual UPC, a barcode on an item versus on the shelf. And that's really done a lot for us in making sure that while we're spending the time doing this, we're actually doing it and getting the benefit out of it.
Yeah. And I think, Schnucks, you all began in using Tally to track inventory availability. And then there was digitizing pricing, integration with ESLs, which also I think it's so cool that shopping lists can be prioritized, telling you exactly where to go in the store as the shopper. And then they've got the pick to light application too, where like the ESL tag lights up if that's your next item to go get it. And then there's obviously the piece too of automating replenishment when items are low. Long way of saying, JW, I'm curious what sequence we tend to see be most valuable for our customers, or maybe it's a guiding principles kind of question, but how do top performing customers like Adrian's company and John's company tend to use our robot and data for first, and then what comes next?
Yeah, I think there's not necessarily a one size fits all approach, right? I think within each organization, there's kind of a different level of priority, and there's a different level of what you can handle. I mean, and John and Adrian both referenced this. The amount of data that starts flowing the second you have a robot in your building is unbelievable. There is so much information that's out there. So some organizations are really built to handle that, right? And they can jump out and they can have a 500 or 600 item task list that generates based off of all of your pricing inaccuracies and out of stocks. If your team is able to handle that, then great. Let's go ahead and implement it all, right off the bat. But some people kind of take the let's crawl, walk, run, right? So prioritize and really start to release and look at different modules first. But what I will say in our most successful retailers, there's been sort of a blended approach where you want to push your teams and you want to help them understand the challenge that's in front of them and be able to tackle that. But doing so in a way where you're truly getting buy-in and where you're engaging the teams to deliver what they can handle when they can handle it. I think the other piece of that though is you kind of reference the different modules or the different things that are available with Tally and with Symbii in general. And what I'll also say is we turn into really, really good partners for our customers, to where we start to explore different use cases. And like Adrian was saying earlier, the best ideas come from your hourly associates, the people in the field who are really making things happen. Well, we get our best ideas from our customers, right? Because there's different things that they'll see that Tally can do and is generating data on, and they're like, well, can you guys do this? And we're like, probably. And then we're kind of working hand in hand to really be able to develop something that just helps grow not only the relationship with our customers, but that relationship that you talked about between the retailer and their customers, right? The people who are coming in and actually doing the shopping on the shelves. And I think that's how we built something special.
Yeah, that's really well said. And for many of our customers, they're just kind of getting started. Like John, I know that you all are thinking a lot about expanded use cases for the data, and maybe we can talk about that for a minute around potential considerations for use across the business and the SpartanNash ecosystem.
Yeah, I think Jeremy, you said it really, really well. With some of the best ideas coming from your customers, and at SpartanNash, at first I think we thought that this was just going to be a store technology that the store used to address out of stocks, and then they started hearing about what Tally does. And, next thing we know, we have our merchandising team coming to us and saying, hey, what about, can we track, planogram compliance to see if we need more facings of one item and less facings of another. And maybe we have too many UPCs in an area or too much selection and not enough of the everyday movers. And then next thing you know, we get our shelf planning team to say, hey, can we look at spacing and what our shelves look like at any time? And we get our fresh merchandisers to say, hey, if we want to be notified, if rotisserie chickens is our number one seller between 5 and 7, can we get notified by Tally if it goes out at 5, if we're ready for business or not? I really think that for SpartanNash, we've just explored the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the information that Symbii and Tally can give to us by using computer vision. And selfishly at stores, I think the one thing I'm most excited about working on, and hopefully, and I know we can get here, is like a low out of stock report. So instead of chasing out of stocks because they're already out of stocks, how can we get ahead of them? Because that's when we're really going to reduce the number of footprints and fingerprints in our stores. If, traditionally, and Adrian, hopefully this will bring back a core memory for you again, but I'm sure it does, because I remember it like it was yesterday, loading up a cart or a U-boat with 35 cases, getting out there, and 1 case goes out. God, that's what would put me in a bad mood every single day. And so the fact that we can hand a list to our store teams and say, you only have to touch the stuff that has to go out like that, and we can get ahead of that, it's going to make everybody much happier because they don't have to break their back loading and unloading U-boats.
Another core memory, John. Just you brought me right there.
You guys are too funny. We've got a couple questions more for the panelists here, but I also want to leave some time. Oh, Sarah, that's funny. I've definitely done that before. I usually hit the raise hand feature when I mean to push an emoji for meetings. So if you've got questions from the audience, we can absolutely take them. So please feel free to put them in the chat or raise your hand. And while we wait for that, Adrian, I would love to hear a bit about, Schnucks is kind of always on the cutting edge of technology of how it can get used. And one of the use cases I believe that's being evaluated at the moment is looking to monitor the bottom basket at checkout, and would love to understand, kind of what's driving that priority and what solutions are being considered.
Yeah, for sure. So back in 2020, I think everybody switched to a single line queue away from your traditional check lanes and having lines of carts that extend into the aisles and, negatively impacting a lot of your customer shopping experience. And we never turned back. It's been great for us in kind of corralling cart traffic around the store. And also, a benefit of moving a lot more candy at the front end than we used to. Now with that, during, I think it was 2 years ago, back when I was over front end for the company, partnered with IT, and we installed queuing technology that would tell a customer which check lane to go to by use of a screen. So since we've stuck to that, we have the opportunity now to know at a single point of entry, as opposed to having install something at every single check lane, if a customer has an item on the bottom of basket, where exactly they're going. So that opportunity right there makes any infusion of technology a little bit easier. But as I think everyone might see in the news these days, shrink is an issue that we're trying to stem, and this is just one of the many ways that we might do that. Jeremy mentioned it earlier. When you think about the consistency of a robot or the consistency of a technology solution, that's going to be there close to 100% of the time. Whereas we have to remember that our teammates, they're humans. I think every one of us makes mistakes or doesn't operate at the 100% level every single day. Or if you're operating in an extremely full check lane environment, because you're super busy, it might make it harder to execute some of the processes that are related to bottom basket, especially with having different types of check lane fixtures. So we're really looking to leverage some some monitoring technology that will then blend in with some other tech that we're trying out on the front end. And Caitlin, you nailed it. I'm really blessed to work for a company that's really leaning forward in technology. It makes my job a lot more fun that I get to interact with all these things. But that's really where we're headed, to try and make it a seamless solution to make it easier on our checkers.
That makes a lot of sense. Yep. Well, unless if the audience has any more questions, this is what we've prepared for you. And as I said that, somebody just submitted a question. So before I get to that one, Mike asked earlier if Tally data is shared with CPG companies and store representatives. So if anyone didn't see my response there, yes. Some of our customers are actually reselling the insights that they collect with our platform to their brand partners and their DSD partners. And it gives all of them a look that's kind of unprecedented into what levers are actually moving the dial for their items, whether it's merchandising, whether it's placement, pricing, promotion. So really understanding at a very granular level what's driving results. Let's see, Mike. So he visited a BJ store in North Carolina, and the store team members that he asked about Tally were convinced that she was spying on them, checking to make sure that they were always busy working. Have you heard this from your team, and how did you help them overcome that fear? So I will kick it first to Adrian, and then we can go to John, and I'll give them a second to think about their response by starting first. Mike, it's a question we get a lot. I think the very important thing is communicating the intention around the results that are good for the business and good for the shopper, and also alleviating the monotony of tedious tasks that store teams have to manage before they get Tally's help. And so really focusing the messaging on, what's in it for them and what's in it for the shopper, and how that ties into the overall company mission has been really important. And hopefully I've now given Adrian enough time to think about his response, and then we can go to John after that.
Yeah, my answer will be relatively short. I haven't gotten that feedback from our team. And maybe it's because we did that slow build and got to tell really good stories coming out of pilot stores. And to John's point, we had stores clamoring for Tally. So I think Tally's had that right mix of personality and results to avoid that. But we're also a company that really leans into this type of thing, right? We have autonomous floor cleaning robots too. So he's not by himself in the store. He's got a partner in every single store that we have. So luckily we've avoided that big brother sentiment from our teammates.
What about you, John?
Oh man, there's like 2 or 3 in every store, I swear to God. It is, and it's anything that comes, with a camera about, oh, they're watching us or they're trying to do it. But again, like the education part is the big thing about it. And whenever someone asks me about, hey, is it spying us? I said, the cameras are only on one side. And if you've ever seen them run, they're like within 8 inches of the shelf. So unless you're skinny, like crazy skinny, like it's probably not spying on you. And so like we do get that a lot. We get a lot of people saying, oh, that's another robot doing a job. But I have yet to see a Tally that has arms. So, again, education is the really big, or communication with your store teams. Again, front end teams, cashiers, huge, and to know like what the technology is doing in the store.
Yeah, well said. And I think too, the proof is in the pudding, and the proof happens very quickly, right? Our customers see about 4x ROI within 3 months or less in the grocery sector. And a lot of the reason for that is because the results are really obvious on the storefront too. So it's these things are very easy to get through. And Mike, I really appreciate the question. And yes, Jill, Tally does blur the faces of anyone it does capture. So thank you for that. Well, I want to be respectful of time to our panelists. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your expertise with us. And to the audience, thank you for giving us an hour of your day. Have a good one.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Everybody.